Welcome to another episode of the Roundtable. Today, we're going to be talking about working with people where we have training data versus no training data. So, I think like when we start with someone where we don't have any sort of training data, we kind of have to go off our own previous experiences as coaches, right? And
Hmm.
so, hopefully, once we do start gathering data and we see them um, trending in a trajectory that we do want them to go with, that will start to make more informed decisions. Whereas in the past, like if someone has come to you with like training data and you can kind of decipher that, you can kick things off with something that is more um, backed and evidence based to have worked in the past. Right.
Yeah.
So I'll pass it to Steve. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I agree. We're going to you get people that come to you and, they've got a history of training. They're a high level athlete that's doing really well and they've come to you for just like, guess that extra touch up and an extra set of eyes, I suppose, on, their training and their program. And it's for them, it's pretty easy. If they give you enough data that you can go through, you'll be able to pick out like, okay, this was a really good block for you, like your pulls or your squat or your bench, and then being able to like break that down into making this like perfect kind of program. Whereas like we get someone with no training data, and it is right, we have to go off kind of the experiences that we've had, and basing it off different types of people that we've worked up with similarities that they kind of have with that person, and then we'll write something up, and I guess it just takes a little bit longer for us to kind of, I suppose, figure it out. But at the same time, if someone's coming to you with no training data, it's almost like they're going to be quite beginnerish, right? So they're going to almost respond to just about anything in a way if what you've written out has some sort of strategic plan and it makes sense.
Yeah, there is that confounding variable with like someone who has training data is more likely to also have been powerlifting for longer, right? So
Yeah.
it it's like when you do work with someone like that, that window of error or like the window of what works is also smaller. So like
Yeah.
it it kind of comes off as harder even though you have more information as well, right?
Yeah. There's also that, like, when we get someone that comes with you with more training data and they're like, this is like what's working for me. There's also the bottleneck too, in which like this isn't going to work forever, although like it has worked and it's worked. We're going to have to go to something different. And that's why you came to me in the first place, right? You've come to me because progress probably isn't going as fantastic as you would hope. Although you do have a lot of training data and you do kind of know kind of what works, but you're coming to me for a reason. And that's
Yeah.
to try and kind of make it better and, I guess push this progress even faster or further.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Dave?
Um, so I think you guys have covered all the bases fairly well. I think the biggest thing that I try and do if I have a client that has training data is sifting through and trying to find what's necessary. So, looking for things that are, I guess, like consistent across blocks, whether it's like whenever they run belt squat, things go well. So like that's a sort of non-negotiable for, at least the first couple blocks that we run together. Like the other thing would be like I guess how far into like the competition calendar they are. If they have a comp on the cards, is it worth trying something new, or should we just play it safe and run with like I guess what they've been doing in the past and playing it off their current data, those sorts of things. So I guess figuring out like where we are with comps, what's necessary, what's not, and then also just asking the lifter, I guess how they feel with things. Like if they're running something super super specific, are they enjoying it? Um, is it still reaping the rewards and the gains that we're looking for? And the other thing is also like if they're trying to guess like fill out a new weight class, do we want to sort of dial that specificity back so we can put a little bit more like I guess hypertrophy work there in place of that super specific powerlifting stuff, so we can start to try and fill out the weight class with a little bit better of a body composition. So I think there's a lot of things you also have to consider outside of the program itself, and then yeah, whether that I guess that'll impact the decisions you make with and without the athlete as well.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm thinking like say someone does come to you with training data, right? You mentioned like you're looking for points where when it was in the program, it's kind of associated with progress. So like you mentioned belt squat. if it was in there, you keep it in there, right? What other things do you guys feel like that you instantly kind of go to when you sift through training data? Like, is it um, progress within the whole block and how they progressed? Is it what they were doing prior to the most progressive block? Accessories, things like that.
I have a big tendency to look at blocks that didn't go well,
Mm.
just because I know that like if this is the change in the block that went well and the block that didn't go well. And that's the easiest way to figure out well what is working, right? So it's like if Dave said, like this person, like they respond really well when they have belt squat, right? Like I have similarities myself with that. So like we'll go to pendulum squat for a block just because I had to get away from that movement, and like just squat just felt shit for a whole block. But put belt squat back in and starts to feel amazing again. So
Mm.
it's like, it's the sheer load, the fact that how much you can load on a belt squat? Like, is it the movement base in the pendulum for me is just super restrictive, where it's just like really up and down, and I don't squat like that, so it's not really going to benefit my comp squat that much. So it's then like we're looking at that's why I go back to like what didn't go well. So there's this block for myself, for example, where I had a pendulum squat instead of belt squat, didn't go that well for my squat. So it's like, okay, we'll change that one accessory back, but we know that the fact that I need to squat 3 times a week for my squats to feel good as well. So we revert back to belt squat, and it's like infinitely better almost straight away. But my body felt better because of the pendulum squat in the preceding block as well.
Yeah, right. Like I agree where there's a lot of value when a block doesn't go well. Like in the moment, it feels pretty
That
shit.
sucks. It sucks. It feels like
Yeah,
you're not
yeah,
doing a good job, right?
yeah. Like that, it definitely sucks. But then, like, once you go through it, and if you can make the correct adjustment and move back to what works, um, it is very satisfying once again. And it feels
Yeah.
like, you can start making gains, and it wasn't a waste of time because now probably never to veer in that direction again, right? So from now on,
Yeah.
or most of it cuts off the error in the future,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. This is why
Um,
I believe that, unsuccessful training blocks can be so valuable in data, because they're the ones where it's like, okay, we know that this is not something that we're going to revert to at some point, probably again, just because of the sheer fact that it just didn't work, and you like potentially regressed, and like you weren't injured, weren't nothing else, like external variables didn't really change. The only thing that changed was your training stimulus, and it didn't work. So we need to acknowledge that and then kind of not go back to that.
yeah, agreed. Do you
I
guys
agree.
have any, I think it'd be helpful if we go through some examples, right? Like you mentioned when something doesn't go well, you need to review it and then change it back to something that works. Um, let's discuss, and I might be putting you guys on the spot, but like let's discuss someone you've worked with where that's been the case. Dave, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I think the biggest one that stands out to me would be one of my clients, Nick. So he's a junior and he's a super heavy, and his squat, like he does quite well with reps. But the interesting thing with him is if we push his rep work, his top end actually doesn't get that much better. He just sort of like gets a little bit fitter. He can pump out sixes and sevens and eights and whatever. And then if we go back to, I guess throwing in a top single or a top set, it's almost like he's, I guess, so deconditioned from having heavy load on his back that he just doesn't really move that great. So he's someone where I kind of have to run. Well, he runs 2 squats, but his secondary has to be low reps. So it can't be sort of more than 5 reps on his secondary, or else we sort of cross this threshold of things being too light, too high rep, and then his primary day suffers a whole lot. Um, so it's kind of one of those things where they're useful for just getting him stronger across the board. So his sixes and sevens obviously make his fives stronger, his fours stronger, all that sort of stuff. So I know that when I want to push his top singles, doubles, triples, or whatever on squat, I need to make that secondary day back to sort of that 5-ish rep range, or else that primary day doesn't really show up for him very well.
Yeah. And across both days, or back when you were running the fives and the sevens, like you're not, um, capping his load, right? Like naturally, because he's doing fives, he's able to just bias towards heavy intensity.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I'm not capping load or anything like that. He just loads up whatever, to the RPE essentially.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. New Steve?
I guess like looking back at Dave, it's like this is where we talk about like was it the preceding block that yielded the progress in the next block, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you can go so far away from something that works into something that doesn't particularly work for top end strength, but does it work like in a block before we go into a peak competition? Like yes, if we're gonna break it out in that way.
Yeah.
Touching on like things that I guess like I'll pick someone close like Shania, right? Like we fell upon like what we worked on towards this competition that she had on the weekend with her squat, just by the sheer fact that she had to travel one weekend, so she was squatting 3 times a week, and she had to go away for a weekend, so we had to cut her middle day and bring her main squat day from Saturday to Friday just for 1 week, and it was the best her squat had performed just in that week. And I was like, okay, like this is really interesting, because in my mind, that middle squat day was really setting her up for that last squat day. But it didn't make a difference. So when I went to write her next block after that, I just manipulated the scheme in which she was doing things. So I pushed from Monday to Tuesday. So she would bench first on a Monday now and then squat on a Tuesday, but skip that middle day and then squat again on Saturday. So it's that same gap that she had in that 1 week where she went from Monday to Friday. I changed it from Tuesday to Saturday because we were going to keep continuing to SBD on a Saturday because we know that she performs really well like that. But I took that middle day out and her squat has just almost like blown up in just one block, really, just from changing that.
Wow.
And it's just like
So she took like 1 day, like less rest between her secondary into primary day.
Yeah, where she would usually have like a middle day where it's just like a tempo or a pause, extremely light. But like in my mind, it was like, this is what she needs. This is like this sweet spot, because we worked it out in previous blocks, sweet spot of this like load and what she needs to perform well. But then skip that day, and then the Friday was fantastic. So in my mind, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna trial this now. If she only needs to squat 2 times, like let's go. Like that's so much better than having to squat 3 times, right?
Yeah, sweating
Unless you like squatting.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I have a similar case where I've got my guy Brian. When we first started, he was still running like Jim Wendler's 5-3-1. So the protocol was like, I think it was five reps, 3 reps, and then like a really light AMRAP set. And that was it. So like 3 sets per week. And it was like twice a week. And in my mind, I was like, oh, like I could program something way better than this. Because for him, like his bench progress wasn't going up with that program as much. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna put him onto like 4 times because that's where I'm comfortable programming it. So like we had a really short period of like 2 into 3 and then went up to 4. And then like it just didn't go as planned. Like wasn't progressing as much as I'd thought it was. And just considering his leverages, like this guy's a deadlifter, so like really, really long arms, can't really arch. And so I was like, okay, like maybe this guy just can't handle too much frequency, but he still needs some sort of volume. So what I ended up doing was like just dropping a day, and hopefully like if I make that middle day light, similar to squats, where he'd have like one big day, a really light bench day, and then another big bench day at the end of the week. Hopefully that would show up, and it finally did. Like he went, like over the course of working with him, we went from like 115 bench, and then just like 2 weeks ago, he hit 140, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's mad.
And
he
like
went off.
he went crazy. He went crazy. It was like when we first started working together, it's like, bro, I want you to make me hit 140. I want to hit 3 plates in my lifetime. And I was like, yeah, I got you. So finally ticked that off, and it's like, oh fuck, now I want 150.
Yeah.
But like that came from working where I was comfortable at with like my own heuristics, like 3 to 4 times high frequency bench works, until it doesn't. And for Brian, his like type of benching just didn't fit most of the cases where I've worked with in the past. So I had to also step out of what I was comfortable with and, prescribe something that genuinely fits him in the way that he recovers.
Yeah. So it works. And it's also like I said before, like we fall upon things right by failure. That's how we learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you learning about the way that Shania recovers, it kind of informs the way you program around other people as well? Or do you kind of like box it in specifically to her situation?
Like an N
Uh,
equals one.
so
Yeah.
I'd say more like her situation in that sort of moment at the time when it happened, but also like I don't really box anyone into the way that I'll program them because like I said, like it builds over time. And I've always got this like this ever growing sort of program. Like when someone says like, oh, like this isn't working, there's times where just last night even like I'm sitting down and I'm responding to people and someone said like, this has cooked me on this day, so I've jumped in their program on the spot, changed a day around for the next week to see if we can make it move better, and then I know that that's like the moving forward. So it's like it's not really boxed in, I would say. It's just like being able to kind of always be expanding.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, I was thinking along the lines of like, because Shania responds in this type of way, and you happen to find it across just because of like pure accidents, right? Does that type of frequency then apply to people of like similar leverages and things like that in the future for people that you work with?
Yeah. Well, I would say that it already did because someone built like Shania, like her limbs and leverages, I wouldn't generally opt for 3 times to start with, right? It's not something that I could particularly consider. It would just seem to work well for her, and it was like we did. It took a bit, but we found that sweet spot because when you're programming 3 times squatting, right, you need to find that sweet spot in the middle. That middle day needs to really be, a day where it does set you up, where we're not overexerting, so you're not going like over a specific RPE or almost percentage. You're able to move with like almost particular speed, and there's like a sweet spot. You go under that or over that, and it becomes, it makes that primary day suffer. So it's like we had a really sweet spot, and that took a while to figure out as well. And then once she took that away accidentally because of life things, and that last day kind of just showed up, just made things work. So I would say like there's not that many people on my roster that I program 3 times squatting regardless. More people are around the 2 times, but so 3 times for me is like it's easy enough to program, but it's harder to find that sweet spot for each specific individual because it is quite hard to find.
Yeah, like more load compared to like high frequency benching, right? Like if you
Yeah.
overshoot one day on bench, like you'll almost be okay. But squats is like, yeah, no, you're definitely gonna have to dial back your
You
prescribed
can
day. Yep.
overshoot 5 days of bench. Keep going up.
Oh no.
I have
I
a
just
question for both
imagine,
of
oh,
you
you
guys.
get it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got a question for both of you guys. So I was just thinking about this earlier when we were talking about collecting or reviewing data from athletes that you get. What would your guys' approach be to, I guess, interpreting and using data if someone comes from like a background or a coach that programs entirely differently to you? So say it's like the RTS style of like starting the block at 8 and then just running 8, 8, 8, 9, 9, 9 or whatever, even if it's not that exact example. But what happens if it's just a completely different style to you? It's like either super low frequency, super high intensity, super high frequency, whatever the case may be. What's your I guess your method of figuring that out, and how do you pick out the bits that will help you?
So I've had this before. I had an athlete come to me that was coached by Hannah, and super high frequency, high intensity across the board, like 4 times squatting, 3 or 4 times deadlifting, 6 times benching. Everything was heavy. Everything that was programmed was ascending, ramping sets every single day. And it was me deciphering that into what kind of worked. And then I still kept it pretty high frequency because I knew the person could tolerate that. They were durable enough to be able to push through it. The hard part that I found like breaking it down was there was no planned deloads. It was just like a deload when you're fucked. So that was hard. That was the harder part because I didn't know how long the person was able to push for. So I had to figure that out myself. But I knew that like the way that they were programmed and the way that it worked was like they were a hard worker as well, so they were willing to push. So I knew that they preferred kind of working to higher RPEs, where it's just like, and then it's like I might start low, but I ramp quite hard, quite fast. And then also at the same time, it's like just looking at how they're moving, understanding it, and then I guess breaking it down from there, right? So it's like we'll start low, but then this person, like it's almost like I washed fatigue out straight away from just like them pushing for a whole year straight and then having to like pull extremely far back once every like 4 weeks, like Danny at the moment, because they were just training like that for a year straight. And then we just created sufficient adaptations really fast. And it was like I didn't really have to change the RPE really because the adaptations were just taking place and more load was getting put on the bar and it was moving exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
In this instance, like all three lifts are progressing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna touch upon it like we all have our initial consults with the people we're working with, and like with our structure, we all program with them on screen, so we do get a chance to communicate with them, right? So if we do go onto the sheet and it's just like the numbers, I would then say like it is pretty difficult to kind of decipher what's going on. But if you can get input as to say like, oh yeah, like this squat bench was progressing across the block, so we can run something pretty similar because it works for them, even if it doesn't fit within our mold. If it's working, we kind of have to understand like, okay, this amount of volume and intensity, even though like we have our own biases, like here is a case where it is outside what is comfortable for you, but it's working. And therefore, like keep it in there and then work around the other problems within the program. Because if we make a problem where there's no problem, that's when we're automatically going to run ourselves into like regression, right? So I try and identify the problem areas. And if someone is coming to you for like, there's a reason that they're coming to you, right? So most likely that's because they want to progress somewhere. So you can pick out somewhere where you can work on. So if 2 out of the 3 lifts aren't progressing, you can look at the third one and try to pick apart like, okay, are they sore? Are they always fresh in the program? And then you can scale it up and down from like, do they need to be given more volume, more intensity, pulled back, things like that.
The
So
other
that's
part
kind of,
too is like,
yeah,
like it's broadening our knowledge when that happens as well, in my opinion. Like this person, like when they came to me, they had just left Pana, but they'd prior to that been coached by Mike Teixeira and prior to that being coached by Joey Flex. So they had it was a good roster of coaches, right? So it was like, now I'm going to see that they told me what worked the best, and everything like that. And it was this style that Pana had programmed for them. It was just ramping stuff across the week. So I was like, okay, like this broadens my knowledge now too. Like, can I trial this with people with similar leverages or like, that can push higher intensities more frequently across the week and frequency. The only part too is me trying to create more predictability about that on performance across days. And then also from block to block and how to make this like, okay, it's going to be, you're going to run like a 4-week block rather than like you're going to run a block until you die. And then you're going to have to pull right back. We're going to just create more predictability around this.
Yeah, I agree heaps. Like when someone comes to you and there is data that, you can kind of just look at and be like, oh, okay, like this works for this population of people, like I need to broaden my understanding. And that helps a lot because like there's the theoretical knowledge and like us understanding principles of strength training, but then there's just so many styles and ways of organizing training that fit within that we don't regularly program. And therefore, like when you do see it, it's like, oh, here's another way that we could like use it.
Yeah. And then also like look at the French team.
Yeah.
Like they're not weak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like? The junior noms or something for Worlds this year is like in the female
Yeah,
section, it's like 6 out of the 8 are French or something ridiculous. Like
yeah, for first,
top,
yeah.
the top nom is French first place across like 6 out of the 8 weight classes or something ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. They
Sure.
just work hard. They do. They like everything's ramping ascending sets every day.
Like
SBD.
hard work.
5 times a week. I'm not exaggerating. It's like 4 times a week SPD at quite high intensities.
It is.
Right.
It's
So it's
quite
like,
crazy. It's like push squat this day, push deadlift this day, push bench every day.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, max out your dumbbell press too.
yeah. I like thinking about that as well. It's like it clearly works, and therefore the issue doesn't lie in like their programming. It's our own, or like my personal understanding of what works,
Yeah.
right? And like
It,
my ability to buy in to something other than what I currently program.
yeah, it's not just that. It's also we need to look at like long term durability as well of athletes as well. Like um, not bashing on anything, but it's gonna get hard to recover from that when you get to a certain strength level. Like
Yeah.
it really does, because I can tell you that for myself, like I love training hard. Like you'll see me all the time, Dave. And Danny, you just know from working with me for so long. Like I don't mind going RPE 10 even when it's programmed RPE 7. Like I'll just do it. But it's like your body doesn't agree with it sometimes for a while, and it gets really hard. So it's like, yeah, it definitely works. And I know that it works just from my own training data and my own history of training, that pushing really hard every single session works. But I also know that the body's not durable enough to be able to put up with that all the time. So that's where we need to get that predictability, and also that point of just being able to recover from session to session in a kind of smart, laid out way.
Yeah. I'm thinking like for myself right now, like I'm very much where you've got the prescribed RPE, and like my eyes generally just glance over. I don't even look at it. I'm like, yeah, I'm push like I've already got a number set that I want to hit for that day. And I'm now bearing the consequences of that. Like I feel it. So
I think you've
like
just reverted back to athlete mind right now, because you like you were like quite beat up for a bit, right? And we weren't fucking pushing too hard. So and you were quite beat. Like you last like 3 weeks. Like your durability had just dropped to being a 66 kilo lifter for so long. With your muscle mass and how lean you were and how strong you were getting, just got harder to recover from pushing that hard, I suppose, all the time. And it's like you go into a surplus and you've just got like infinite recovery now, and you're back in like athlete mind of just being like, okay, I can push, and you're like, because you mentioned me and you're like this block's different. There's top set every single day, and I'm like, but it's like in my head, I'm like, but one of them's like capped at 7. I haven't gone past that. But you're going like, nah, it's top set every single day.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
this season's irrelevant.
it'd be the way I'd see it is like Friday is my main squat day, and then 3 days later it'd be like a heavy triple. But that heavy triple on the Monday that I do ends up matching what I do the previous week
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
can.
Because you
Because
can.
I can. And I was like, oh yeah, fuck. Like I'm just getting so strong right now. Like I just load it up.
I think it was
But
funny too when I was like, you can just like auto regulate and stick to your RPE, and you're like, oh, I didn't even think of that.
I was like, there's no way out. I've made my identity plus 10 every week. Like who if I don't do this, a box of failure. And then it required you to then like be a coach and like pull, like you can pull back, right? Oh yeah, that's right, I can.
Yeah,
But like that it shows how bought in I am to like previously that submaximal kind of training, right? Like that's where we've come from, which allows us to now push it really hard, right?
yeah,
Whereas the other style, or like French, out the way we characterize like French style training is like chronically hard training throughout the entire year,
yeah,
right? Um, and I think for us, that's something we struggle with because instantly the things we point out is like physiologically we're not able to recover. But I think for them, they had that initial period of like trialing it, and sucked. But then once they started to develop a tolerance and adaptations for it, then it's like now they can recover from it and they're durable enough to keep doing that, right? Whereas for
I
us,
think we should all go through a period where you're training sub-maximally, or like being super honest with your RPEs, almost to a point of like pure RIR, right? And you're recovering from it, and you build up that tolerance, those adaptations, and then at the end of it, like then it's like, okay, if we do this for like 3 to 4 blocks, where we're just like, I would say going through the motions, because we don't want to be coming in with intent every single time. You hit that like 2 blocks out mark, or like a block out mark, and then okay, fuck, let's go. Let's turn French and let's fucking push it. And then you go. Then it's like you're gonna be able to build off all this sub-maximal work that you've put through. This is what I'll look back at like injuries that I've had in the past where I wasn't able to push it super hard, and then like we'll like block a block or 2 blocks or 3 blocks even, and then but I still got all the work done, and then it's like this injury starts to dissipate, and I'm able to push myself again, and I just explode, and it's like that's my body telling me that you can't keep doing what you're doing, so we had to dial back and just work sub-maximally, and then when you're able to push again, but it's like when someone's healthy, all they want to do is push. So it's almost like we need a program in a way where we keep it kind of sub-maximal when we're far away enough from competition, and then it's like, okay, now it's go time.
Yeah, agreed. Like, it is fun to push.
It is, but you're going to have to go through like a block or 2 after this where it's like, okay, I'm going to have to be honest now, and then I'll reap the rewards again when I'm ready.
Yeah, and I think when someone does come to you with training data that you see that as well, like you can easily make some manipulations and like give them a bit more recoverability just by making them do a little less than they're comfortable with, and automatically it'll just peak and show what they've been doing in the past, right? Because if they've been coming from a baseline where they've been working super hard, all you need to do is start expressing it without fatigue, and like the gains will show up.
Yeah, it's kind of like how everyone comes off a competition, and we get back in the gym like a week or 2 later, it's like baseline's so fucking crazy right now, just from that one table week, because they're pushed so hard for so long. They finally tapered, hit the platform, get back in the gym, and they're like, oh damn, I'm so strong, because you actually like gave yourself a week to recover.
Yeah. Can't wait. But for yourself, Steve, like you'll probably be seeing that in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And how about you, Dave? Are you competing anytime soon?
I don't have plans to compete for a while, man. Maybe end of the year, December, something like that.
Yeah. From now till then, you just got to work hard.
Yeah, 100%.
And then you get to see your baseline after that.
Oh, bro, I can't wait to get back.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up here, guys. Thanks for the chat, and hopefully you guys learn a bit more about gathering training data and what things to look out for.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.